Hi everyone, my name's Megan Lacey. I'm one of the information literacy librarians at Gutman. My role is to help you with the research process at any stage. So if you ever need help developing a topic or coming up with a research question, creating keywords to search, finding the right database, evaluating information, figuring out if it's credible or appropriate for an academic paper, these are the kinds of questions that you should feel free to ask me. Don't be shy, it's my job and I'm happy to do it. So briefly today, I would like to just talk to you a little bit about why you should be looking in other places besides Google, particularly for this project you're doing of creating an intervention. I really want you to imagine yourself as a practitioner right now. This is what you will have to do in the workplace, is figure out how to come up with interventions that are based on evidence, that are based on research, that have a good chance of working. So what I have on the screen right now is an infographic of the deep web. And the reason I want to show you that is just to talk a little bit about how Google works and what you're actually searching when you search Google. So if you imagine all of the information that you could find on the web, so articles, ebooks, videos, podcasts, if you can imagine that as the ocean, the blue in this infographic, what Google and other search engines capture when you do a search is just what's estimated to be 0.03% of what's actually on the web. So just the surface web, just the top of all of that information. And that's because Google can only search things that are not password protected, like your email, and that aren't behind some kind of paywall. So only things that are free, like Wikipedia is a free web page. Commercial websites are free to get into, but I'm sure some of you have had the experience of Googling and finding an article that looked good for a research project and clicking on it and discovering, oh no, I have to pay for it. And that's because quality content isn't free. You have to pay the writers, the editors, the people who lay out all of that information. So those kinds of things are findable in library databases, which are collections of information, mostly journal articles from scholarly journals and popular sources like the New York Times. And you just have to know as a researcher that you need to go look for that content in a library database. So that's why it's depicted here kind of in the middle. It's some of this information can only be found by going to the library database. You cannot find it just by Googling. So where do I find those library databases? You might be asking yourself. You want to start at the library's webpage. This is our online presence. You will find on the library page a search box, and if you're ever wondering what am I searching when I search in that box, you're actually searching many of the databases we subscribe to. So there's a lot. I like to think of databases as stores, like there's a Target, there's a Walmart. Depending on what you need to find the right store. There are so many that how could you possibly know which database to start with? So I don't think actually clicking on that tab is very useful to you, but you could start with one search because you're searching many databases at one time. But I really want students to get in the habit of looking for the research guides. So these are created by librarians, so by me and Alexandra Hamlet, the other librarian. And every library, every academic library has something like this on their webpage because librarians are here to try and help direct you to the best sources as quickly as possible so that you can spend more time processing the information and synthesizing it into a paper. So click on research guides. Since you're in an urban studies discipline, you're going to be wanting to look for an urban studies related, I'm sorry, not urban studies, health and human services. So since you're in the health and human services discipline, you want to click on health and human services. And you can see we have all the information arranged by the different genres. So when I looked at your assignment, I saw that you really had two information needs. The first is to figure out some background about your population. So let's say you are doing senior citizens who are facing depression or those kinds of issues, and you want to do a group therapy for them, you're going to need to find out how many elderly people are dealing with this kind of issue, and what are other issues that senior citizens are dealing with. So you might want to click on this link, statistics by topic, and we have a Health and Human Services tab. And the main one I want you to be familiar with, because you are Health and Human Services majors, is the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services website. This is a federal agency that's charged with overseeing a bunch of other agencies, including the Centers for Disease Control and the FDA. This is a good starting place for finding information that is on that is dealing with your issue. So look for the agencies that are part of the Health and Human Services. And then there's a lot listed here. So you have to think about what population, what agency would match best to your population. So for instance, if I was doing that project of looking at senior citizens, I would click on the Administration for Community Living, because they seem to be interested in supporting people who are older and have disabilities. So I click on that. And this is like finding out, well, who's also interested in this topic besides me? Because obviously I'm not the only person who's a social worker. So when you go to this page, or any of the agency's pages, they're all going to be a little bit different. You're going to just want to look for something on the page that says research or resources or reports. And if I found over here under data and research, if you click on that page, they've already collected a bunch of information about the population that they're working with. So I can just use that to start to understand the population more. So I can't do this for every agency, because I can't predict which groups you're working with right now. But if you need help with this, again, that's the time to send me a question. Now I'm going to switch gears and talk about where to find articles. So that was the first task you needed to do, is figure out some background about your population. The next is figure out what interventions work with them. So if you click on Find Articles, you'll find the databases that will have the scholarly and popular and some trade publications that will perhaps discuss those interventions that you're interested in. I like to start with Academic Search Complete. I said earlier that databases are like stores of information, and this is kind of like a target of databases. It's got a lot of subjects that it covers, and since social work often intersects with other disciplines, it can be helpful to go here first, because maybe you'll get something from the social work literature, or maybe there'll be something in the medical literature that would be relevant to your topic. So it's a good starting place. But this is all to say, if you're not finding what you like in this store, maybe look at these other stores that are listed here, okay? So Academic Search Complete. As you can see, I'm not on campus, so I have to use my library barcode that's on the back of my ID card. I'm going to type that in real quick. So now I'm in the database, Academic Search Complete. I can tell because it says right up here. Just keep in mind that the company EBSCO over here owns a bunch of databases, and you might accidentally click into a whole different database. And so just to show you, if I click on PsycInfo, everything's going to look the same in terms of the layout of the page, but everything on the back end is different. So just be aware of where you're searching. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Academic Search Complete. You can actually read descriptions of all the databases by hovering over that little balloon. One other thing, I was entering my barcode. If you do that and it doesn't work, please let me know, and I can talk to a college assistant and get your barcode fixed. It's usually like 5 minutes to fix, so it's not a hard thing to do. Just I need to know that you need the help, so you got to reach out. Okay, so As an example, I'll do the senior citizens with depression group intervention. So I hope you watched the keyword video. Professor Spector said you did. Um, but if you haven't, just keep in mind that you want to think of 2 to 4 keywords, depending on your topic, that describe what you're looking for, the concepts that you're looking for. So imagine what words you would like to see in the article title or in the body of the article itself. So if I was doing this, I would want to see, well, probably elderly, or I could put senior citizens. The database, this is one of the perks of them, kind of like Google, comes up with suggestions. I find it a little overwhelming and not always helpful to search this many things at one time, so I'm going to just start with elderly, but just be aware that that's there, so it can help you come up with other terms. Depression and support groups, and I'm going to actually put support groups in quotation marks so I get that exact phrase, so I don't get support somewhere in the article and groups somewhere else in the article. Because remember what's happening when I'm searching, the default search is a keyword search, so the database is looking for those terms that I've put in each box all at once. All of these terms have to appear somewhere in the article, but if I don't put quotation marks around it, I might not get an article that's about that idea, support groups. I might just have randomly the word support over here in the article and groups down here, and they don't relate to each other. So that's why I did that. I'm telling you, because you can also do that in Google or any other database to help you find more relevant results. Okay, so I click search and I get articles in other languages. So that's one way you can narrow right away, is by source type. So you probably only want academic journals. I'm going to click on that. And you probably only want things in English, but if you know another language, feel free. If you can read and write in Spanish, good for you. And then you could narrow by year, date range. So you probably don't want articles written in 1984, but maybe since maybe around the last 10 years. So click on that. And here's an example, and maybe one that's very relevant right now. Online support group for members of the community with depression, because since we're all online, we're all isolated right now. The full text is right here. You can click over in the facets on the side to just find articles with full text. If you don't do that, you might find some that the database doesn't have, but there will be a link that says find it at CUNY, like this one right here. The article isn't in this particular database, but if I clicked on find it at CUNY, I could look to see if another database had it, and another database does, Elsevier Science Direct Freedom Collection. I can click on that. And now I've left that store. I've left Academic Search Complete, and now I'm in a whole other database, Science Direct, and there's the article that I can download. Just a couple other things I want to draw your attention to. So when you click on this, which one? What I'm looking at when I click is a record. It's not the actual article, but the record could be very helpful for many reasons. One, you find all of the components for your citation, the title of the journal it appears in, PLOS One, when it was published, what pages it's on. There's also an abstract, which describes what the article is about, so you could read that and determine whether or not you even want to read the article, if it's relevant or not. You can also use these subject terms to help you find other things on that topic. Think of them like hashtags. Like if I might not have, I was saying earlier that you have to come up with keywords. Coming up with keywords can be hard sometimes. So if you find an article you really like, look at the subject terms and see if you could do a new search with those subject terms that you find relevant. So I might redo my search and do support groups and mental depression instead of just depression. It's just an example. I want you to just be aware that that's there. To look at the actual article, I click on the PDF full text. And looking at the article itself. So I can tell that this is a scholarly article because it has all these names with academic affiliations attached to it. I can see all the universities that these people work at, so I know they're scholars. It's laid out like a scholarly article. and it has citations. So these are all good signs. I found a quality scholarly article. The next step is determining whether it's a relevant scholarly article. You don't want to just use anything. Okay, that's all